Welcome back to Deal Flow. Ryan right here as always. Okay, got a guest today who said that this podcast will, how'd you describe it, would be probably the greatest M&A podcast ever recorded. I can't remember how you put it in the email. How did uh you phrase that?
Yeah, I mean, when it's you and I chopping it up, of course it's going to be the greatest M&A podcast ever recorded, right?
We'll give a quick introduction for the listeners and let's get into it.
Yeah, so get comfortable, my friend, because I definitely have somewhat of a unique background, which I guess perhaps is why I have unique perspective and value for clients. But I started my career at a big New York-based law firm called Weil, and I was part of their private equity and M&A group. But as you and I have talked about off camera, I'm extremely entrepreneurial by nature. So after helping many of the clients make millions, in some cases billions, on M&A transactions, I decided I wanted to be the one signing the purchase agreement rather than the one drafting it. And a lot of lawyers reach this revelation, I feel like, but very few take action on it. I did. I jumped into entrepreneurial land first as an investor and advisor, and then straight into the deep end of operating small businesses and early stage venture-backed companies. And I ended up co-founding a technology company and scaling it to a really exciting and significant exit. It was funny because it was like this full circle moment. I finally was the one that had built the business being acquired rather than the one papering it, which was really cool. And then kind of one of those things, a check the box moment. But what I learned through this collective 10-year journey is that I love being an entrepreneur and an operator, but I also love being a lawyer and helping other people reach that same dream that I had reached. So I decided to bring the operator's mindset and my legal experience together and founded Transition Point Law with some really great people.
It's interesting because and I don't know, the adage, those who can't do teach and stuff like that, you'll see on when I was a kid to this day. And people talk about why people do what they do and if they could do this, would they rather do that? And it bears repeating that people have different motivations, and which is why the M&A world is so messy, right? Because it's not as simple as saying that Bob wants to sell his business, figure out EBITDA, give a multiplier, and then let's close in 30 days. It's just, it's just not that. There's all these due diligence questions that have to be answered as well. But the motivations, the process, why does someone want to get into it? And then why one person can succeed at running a business and another person can't. The question that I have with our company moving forward is, do I want to outsource, some contract work? Do I want to bring on employees? I used to run a company. We had as many 60 employees at sometimes, and man, kind of thought of getting back into that. This doesn't interest me. And maybe it will in the near term, maybe it won't. But at the end of the day, it's interesting to hear kind of how you went from legal to operator to kind of now where you are, because 10 years from now you might have a different perspective. And so it's how did you come to these revelations? Was it exhaustion? Was it an aha moment each time? Like what kind of got you from one stage to the next?
Yeah, I always joke it's the three acts of Colby McKenzie. So I went to law school and became a lawyer with the idea. So a lot of people go to law school and they are obsessed with the law and they want to be lawyers for forever. I viewed it as this tool to really set me up for a career. And so I always had this entrepreneurial itch from the jump. And so I used the opportunities that I got working for a really big law firm to make that springboard more successful into entrepreneurship. But the interesting thing and the turn of events is I'm not sure that I ever thought that I would want to marry the two together. But I reached this point where I was like, man, I kind of miss being a lawyer. I kind of miss having the ability to counsel others and help people kind of reach what I've reached. And you can do that in coaching or advisor capacities. But I thought, why neglect the fact that I had this really incredible legal background? Why not just try and marry it all together? And we joke, and kind of our adage at Transition Point Law is be careful taking counsel from people that haven't been in your shoes. And that's one thing that we really pride ourselves in. I feel really confident in the advice that we give because I in almost every situation can put myself in people's shoes, having actually been the operator, having lived the exact situation that they're in. So it's been an interesting and winding journey, but I feel like it's one that's really turned into something great.
Okay, so you mentioned you worked on some really big deals back at your previous, I guess, two previous entities ago. I'm sure you've seen the gambit of deals that have gone extremely smooth to things that have kind of gone off the rails and fallen apart or almost fallen apart. What are some of the maybe uh, bizarre things, or how you want to phrase it, things that have come up that you go, man, this like when you're trying to do it, when you're trying to close a deal, these are things that can really crush a deal if you're not careful. How did you kind of overcome those or try to overcome them and maybe you failed?
Yeah, so I think one of the advantages of having spent significant time as an operator and also at a major law firm is that our team is really pros at what I call messy M&A. And as you and I both know, and we've talked about, like, many M&A deals are not as cookie cutter as buyer knocks on seller's door. You sign an LOI and a purchase agreement, and everybody involved is happy and hugging. Like, operating a small business can be messy. But I don't think that has to, and I want to be clear, that doesn't necessarily exclude you from M&A or exits. It just means you have to get creative in the strategy and approach. And I know you and I are both sports guys, and I listen to a ton of sports podcasts. And my favorite episodes always involve these rankings or listings of some sort. So I thought it'd be a fun way for you and I to chop it up by kind of outlining my favorite types of messy M&A deals, and I've given them some interesting and quirky names to help them resonate. But maybe that's where we can take it, is we can just walk through these different M&A scenarios, and you and I can kind of speak to the interesting diligence and pain points of these various kind of ways in which you can reach an exit.
Yeah, that works for me, man. So we start. How many are on the list? And we starting at the end of the number one or the last one?
So I'm a sucker for using the number seven. It's my favorite number. So seven is the magic number here. I would say I think the interesting thing is there's no real power ranking to the list, but what it is just a way to actually shine a light on these different scenarios that I continually see founders or owners say, man, I can't tell I'm in this situation. And it's like, you're viewing this the wrong way. You can always do something, right? You just have to get a little more creative with it. So seven's the number, and we can kick it off with number one. And this one, you seem like the guy that has a lot of tools in the garage. So I think this one will resonate with you. I call it the former favorite. So everyone has that tool that they really love and it works great, right? But then you buy the new high-tech, fancier tool, and it can accomplish the same things and more. And all of a sudden, what used to be your favorite tool is now collecting dust, and not because it doesn't work, right? But because the owner just prefers this new tool instead. So have I pegged you? Is that you?
Wait, are you saying I'm the former favorite or I'm the new
No, I'm saying you
tool?
for sure have the tool that's getting neglected in the garage.
I resemble that comment. I'm not sure if I should take that as a compliment or not, though. Yeah, I got you. I didn't know it's a therapy session, but okay.
But so I this doesn't just happen in the garage, it happens all the time in business. And I think you have this division or this business unit that just gets deprioritized or is underperforming because it's no longer getting the attention that it once did. And I think from my experience, and I'd be curious to hear yours, I think 9 out of 10 times an owner just keeps the business unit and they just keep working on it. It's making money. Why bother it? And they just continue the path forward, even though they have this kind of somewhat neglected business unit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always hard to communicate to a potential buyer why the existing owner is doing what they're doing, and what I always try to tell them is because they're making a lot of money, right? Like they're making, if it's a successful business, um, and they're making a lot of money, then yeah, they're not necessarily incentivized to go into to fix all these problems that you see, and so keep that in mind. And so, um, yeah, I do we do see that, and it's interesting because I think buyers come into it with the mentality of how could an owner have these obvious problems in their business, well, the owner's been making five, $700,000 a year for 35 years or 20 years or whatever it is, 15 years. They're just in a different spot than you are, who's wanting to make that. And so I think uh, that's something we do see, and in trying to help the buyer understand that you probably shouldn't talk about that too much. That's an added advantage that you might can get the business at a discount by not bringing it up, just understanding that it's there.
Yeah, and I think we need to make divestiture M&A more popular, like even among the search funds, even among the acquisition entrepreneurship community, because what I see is instead of it just being neglected in somebody's hands, you can create this win-win scenario. So if an owner were to divest that business unit, they can have more capital, right? And they can actually take that capital and put it into growing the core business or the business that's the primary focus. But to the buyer, like you can get this incredible asset or this incredible business division, and you can give it the TLC and make it your priority. And all of a sudden, a business unit that's doing 1 million a year can be doing two just by having somebody make it their core focus. And so it's one of those things that it's the former favorite in somebody's eyes, but it could be an incredible asset in somebody else's hands, right?
Yeah, and we come across this the other day where a company's looking to raise capital, and how they're going to do that is by selling their real estate, right? So that's how they're going to do it. So if you're looking to raise capital, that might be one way that you could do it is sell off a business unit that you don't really care about anymore. Use that to raise the capital that you need for something else.
Totally. It's non-dilutive, right? It's capital that you don't have to take outside debt or equity
Yep.
or things like that. And so it's one that I always think is interesting, and I think not enough people are looking at that opportunity. The second one is the tape line. So everyone has seen the breakup movie where they put the line down the middle of the room and they start divvying up what's mine and what's yours. Businesses divorce too, and it's similarly messy and emotional and can go really poorly if you don't approach it in this way where you're actually trying to separate the assets in a way that you can have two businesses continue as going concerns. A split the pie, not the baby type situation, right? And so business breakups, I think, are another one that they can actually be a real opportunity for owners, investors, outside parties trying to get involved. Like you and I think this might have actually been how you and I met. This one is obviously a favorite of mine, but I think it's interesting because I think this is the nexus where we met. But you don't have you can do business divorces in a way that allow both people to find success separately.
Yeah, and so if you're a small business and the buyout is an SBA 7(a) term buyout, so 5 million or less, you can use that. And most people don't realize that. And that's what we try to help educate people is that, if you're looking to buy your partner out, it's 5 million or less. That's step one. It takes off a lot of the tension there because now the SBA has given the money, not the partner, right? Because if things are going bad, you might be like, well, is he going to pay back or is she going to pay back? What happens? I don't trust him anymore. So you kind of alleviate that tension. And two, you might get a little bit better valuation than the partner would have given you on a personal loan. And so there's some pros and cons there. But I think that the thing to your point, we had this happen the other day though, is um, a partner came to us and said, "Hey, I want to do a buyout." And so we sent them to, and we thought the company's bigger than the 5 million SPA. So we sent them to a business broker. They ran a valuation. The valuation came back like 12 million. And so he went and talked to us. He goes, "Okay, well, I'm gonna sell for that." He went and talked to his partner and said, "Hey, I want to sell the company." Long story short, the partner's like, "Oh, okay, well, let's figure out how to keep this thing running." So, but that was kind of the catalyst to get the thing going again was just that conversation about what is the value of the business and then get it going. And that doesn't always work that way, but there are options. And I think to your point, it doesn't have to end messy. My partner just left my company. It was all good. No ill will. We had a nice, easy transition out. But um, many people don't realize that there are options to exit. And we talk to people all the time where they're so frustrated with their partner and they don't know how to get out of that. And it's a lot easier than you might think.
And you hit it on the head. It's like you got the list in front of you. So number three for me is what I call the bag to freedom. And this one resonates with me because whether it's a partner or a founder with investors, like sometimes you just get in a place where you feel trapped in the business and you no longer really want to be a part of it. And I've seen this ruin people, like truly. And as a former founder, I can totally empathize. Like life's too short, but I also understand wanting to do right by the partners or the investors. So you have to find that way of gaining freedom without torpedoing the business. And you hit it on the head. Like a buyout can be a really great way of getting money to the person that wants to leave, unlocking that unhappy partner, but also getting somebody that's heart's not in it out of the business. And you hit it on the head again there as well, because the new SBA rule changes from 2023 actually allow you to take advantage of those partial buyouts or using seller financing and things like that to actually make this one closer to a reality for many, many businesses than it once was.
Yeah, no, this one to me seems to be an education process, right? We'll see as this becomes more known. I think we'll see more of these stories where partners are able to solve their problem through an SBA buyout, because they realize that that's not an option. Most partners don't even realize that's an option right now, and so it seems like that one, as we get more education out to the marketplace, we're gonna hear more of these stories of partner buyouts through the SBA program.
Totally. So you can say we're divvying up the assets, we're going our separate way. There's no cash transaction. It's just assets to one party, assets to another. Or you can say, I want the whole business. I will buy
Right.
you out and I'll keep it all to myself, right? You have those two options in kind of the messy M&A process.
Well, and if it's there are times where like it might be better for you to split the business and to go, depending on the strengths of the parties and what you're looking to do. One might, just to get something simple, one might like doing commercial plumbing, you might like doing residential, so you kind of split up the business like that. It's kind of clear, clear cut and dry. But if it's really bad, it's really there's a lot of tension there. There's a lot. It's hard to trust someone if they're going to send you that check every quarter to pay your buyout on a personal note, right? Because you
Totally.
don't trust them. And so
Totally.
I
Yeah,
think that,
you got to that point by it's
right,
not a happy place.
right, exactly. And so the SBA can salvage some of that. So instead of the business going under, or maybe the business can't sell for what both of you want, or you don't want to do it anymore, but Bob does. Well, Bob don't want to sell and sign a 5-year no compete. So I think that's a lever that's gonna get pulled a lot.
I think so too. And it's one that I think will make a lot of people happier because the last thing you want is somebody that's part of a business that they don't want to be a part of. Like that never really ends well.
Yeah, exactly.
So number four, I call it the be quiet and exit. So I just got around to finally watching Ford versus Ferrari, so I'll liken it to the race car that's running on fumes and flats, and the brakes are shot, and all you have to do is like get to the finish line, right? So I often hear of these personalities or business issues leading to the business shutting down or dissolving, and I always think to myself like I feel like they really missed out on an opportunity to make something instead of nothing. It's like you had an opportunity to just put your head down and get to an exit, and instead you chose the earlier, the short path, and you just said, "We're shutting this down." It's one of those things, and I always liken it to, and I'll even give you a quick PSA to our listeners, like you don't have to be happy to exit. The business doesn't have to be perfect to exit. Like it doesn't mean that it's an invitation to lie or mislead. But you don't have to have the perfect business to sell. You can not be happy with your partner. The business can have hiccups or something. You need to have the right counsel in your corner to help you manage whatever issues you're having, to help you present to the buyer so you're not spooking them. But sometimes it's best to just be quiet, put your head down, and focus on this exit process, which everybody can be aligned on instead of just cutting things short and exiting via kind of disillusion or just shutting the business down. So many people leave money on the table, I feel like.
No, I love that point. And the only thing I'll add here is a quick comment, which is to say, um, I think a lot of sellers, if they would almost figure out a mental framework to say, okay, this process is worth X dollars, and then remind themselves that constantly. This process is worth X dollars, and that X dollars is worth the process, right? So a million, 10 million, a billion, whatever it is, and then remind themselves that's what you're going for here. And then I think that'd be helpful. I think they kind of get lost in the process of, oh, they said this or whatever. And all these emotions, which are hard to avoid, come into the equation. And going back to that first principle was this process is valued at this, and I think it's worth the process. Kind of that loop to help you get through that because it is tough on sellers as they go through the process, and I think they forget why they're doing it.
Totally, but one thing I've also seen is like you have people at each other's throats, so they're dealing with a debt overhang that's really weighing on the business. And if you band together and you've been through these processes, like an exit process and preparation, like it's really all consuming. So all of a sudden, all the outside noise, all those other problems kind of disappear because you become laser focused on, okay, like this is a really big lift to get from where we are to actually papering that exit. And all of a sudden, like that noise kind of dissipates when people get really focused, which sometimes can be a great thing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, yes, from that perspective, I think that the other thing that I see is that it's hard to get people to, um, like I talk to sellers and they're maybe sub-million to EBITDA, and trying to encourage them how to just retool their business to get there. And sometimes it's a lot easier than just saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But there's a mentality that you have to have, to accomplish these things. And I think it's interesting because the M&A world, there's so many dollars at stake, but sometimes getting people to spend those dollars to get to that point is an interesting process and an interesting sales cycle. So
Really? Yeah. And a lot of it's just psychology, right? Like I can't spend this 50,000. It's like, really? Because it could be 50 million. Like
exactly,
let's
exactly,
weigh those two at the same time.
exactly right.
So number five, and this one skews in the negative direction, but it's one that pops up and therefore made the list. So this one I call court or quit. So despite the hope that everybody is always good actors, like sadly we all know business partners, founders, or joint venture partners can do bad stuff. It happens, right? The courtrooms are full of it. It keeps litigators paid. But for most small or even mid-sized businesses, like court kills. Litigation is expensive. And I'm a lawyer. That's coming from a lawyer, right? Like I'm not saying you should continue with a bad actor. I'm not saying silence is the alternative. Instead, I think you have to press that bad actor and say, you can select between us going to court because you've done something bad, or you're quitting. And that can sometimes be them getting out of the business at no cost. Sometimes it's worth paying them to just leave. And I think like obviously this is messy and entangling and this comes with all kinds of caveats, but sometimes if you just get the bad actor out of the way, you can clean things up, you can right the wrongs, and you can take the business and actually continue moving forward at a significantly cheaper cost than if you have 2 years of drawn out litigation, which you and I know is a death nail.
Yeah, only thing I add here in my upcoming book about buying businesses, I have, when we get off, let me shoot me a list that you might have as well of red flags that are like automatic ripcord pullers. And to your point, this would be early on ripcord pullers, but you kind of as you go through the process, if an owner comes to you or you're in the process and the seller says, yeah, we did, I don't know, pick a number, $10 million top line, whatever. They go through all this stuff. And then you come to find out that you look at the P&Ls and there's some minor discrepancy. That's expected, right? That's expected. But they go, no, we hadn't had a lawsuit in 10 years and and they're in the middle of a major litigation. Pull the ripcord, right? Like go ahead and just and kind of make a list before you get this process of what are the things that you're going to pull the ripcord on the deal for. Now you bring up a viable option, maybe you can figure out a way around that. But I think it's important to have kind of a mental checklist of these are actually big deals that I have to get out of it for, and these are not. And build that list before you start this process because when you're in the thick of it, it is hard to understand what is important and what's not.
And I think that's interesting because you're taking it from the other angle, and that makes even more sense. So I'm a co-founder, I'm a 50/50 owner, and my partner has done something bad. If you take that, like let's just go back to the other one, be quiet and get to the exit. It doesn't work because you have red flags that the buyer's saying, whoa, these guys are doing something that I don't want to be a part of. Instead, this option is you've identified, whoa, my partner's done something bad, and you take the proactive approach to get them out of the business to clean that stuff up so that when you do get to the exit, ta-da, that red flag doesn't exist. Or you can be way more forthcoming to say, hey, I had a bad partner, I've cleaned it up, here's where we are. And your
Right.
likelihood of exit goes way up if you're proactive and taking care of it rather than being like, oh, let's just take the be quiet and quit approach. Like with bad actors, that doesn't work.
That's right. Okay. I know we're the clock. Why don't we do this? Why don't we put the final two in the show notes for the listeners to check out there? Where can people find you between now and when the podcast comes out and connect with you afterwards?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, easy spot. I try to check my DMs and pretty active there. And then we can also be found at our website, and I'll make sure I give that to you for the show notes as well. So you can check out the show notes to see our website and learn a little bit more and connect with me however you see fit.
Awesome. Colby, thank you so much for your time today. Enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well.